Hello and welcome to Piece of Pod, a podcast brought to you by South Coast law firm Warner Goodman. I'm Sarah Whitemore. I'm an employment lawyer and senior partner in the firm with over 30 years of experience. In this podcast, I'll be having conversations with law firm partners, business owners, clients and other contacts of mine, and we'll be engaging in conversations about running businesses, career journeys, and how to excel in the world of work. So if that's of interest, why not grab yourself a cuppa, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. My guest today is Neil Munz-Jones from MDJ2. He is a retail and strategy consultant, a coach and a mentor, inspirational speaker, and an author. I first met him when attending a breakfast seminar for reluctant networkers, and as the speaker, I was fully expecting him to be an extrovert and to be the confident networker in the room, but he admitted to being a reluctant networker himself. In fact, has written a book about reluctant networkers. So from there, as I too am a reluctant networker, our networking friendship began. So we will be exploring that today. But as ever, we always start with the career journey. So Neil, when you were at school, did you plan to write a book about reluctant networking?
No.
What were your school thoughts in terms of career choices?
I didn't really have a great career plan, which basically meant around about the time I finished my what I call proper job, so I worked for 20 years doing a variety of corporate jobs. I was talking to a headhunter and he looked at my CV and he said, this is a bit eclectic, which I think is a polite word for random, not really thought it through. So no, I did a summer job in banking, and at the time when I graduated, lots of people going into the city, the money was good, so that's what I did. I went and worked in banking for 3 years, then I did an MBA, then I worked in retail, because I decided I didn't like banking. So I worked in retail for 3 years, I think. I was at B&Q, worked in a store, just learnt a lot about leadership working in a store. And then I left and worked in manufacturing for 6 years, but my biggest customer was B&Q, so there was a bit of logic between that move. And then I went back to Kingfisher B&Q, did another 3 years. And
did they have elastic attached to the back of you that kept snapping you back in? Or
I think I did meet somebody who went back 3 times, but twice was enough. And then when I left, I said I like working with B&Q, just not for them. And they were very kind and hired me back as a consultant fairly soon after I left. So I did, I think probably about 5 years before I set up on my own. So this is 20 years ago. That was when I did do a bit of a plan. So I went to Venice with my wife. We're same age for our 40th, and I thought I need to set some goals for my 40s, and because I hadn't really had any in my 30s, rather than just sort of work and have kids, and it went quite quickly. And so I thought that I don't want to be working for corporates forever. So I thought maybe another 5 years. But what I do want to do is set up my own consulting company, teach in a business school maybe, and write a book. But it's 5 years away, so I don't actually have to worry about doing anything about it. And then a few weeks later, I got made redundant by B&Q.
Right.
But my boss really nice. He said, I think you'd be a really good consultant. So you can either leave today, take the redundancy, or you can stick around for a few more months as an employee, and then we'll hire you back as a consultant for a couple of days a week for a few months. So I went home that evening and thought, that sounds rather like this thing I think I might want to do in 5 years' time. And said this B&Q opportunity will give me a year, let's say, to just give it a go. And yeah, that was that 20 years ago.
So that sort of negative employee experience, if you like, just accelerated what you had hoped would be your positive experience in due course.
I've met a lot of people who've left B&Q through various rounds of redundancy, and it's never fun, the process of being redundant. But everybody within a few months is like, okay, and they're doing some amazing things because B&Q gives you great skills and experience, and you look back and go, I'm very grateful to B&Q for everything that I learned there. And I do wonder, because I had 3 young kids at the time, and going out on your own is quite a big, bold move financially, and had a mortgage, and we might come on to the house story.
Yeah, well, tell me the house story. I love the house story. I've heard it before, and I'll listen again.
Yeah, so the house story it came out so exactly at that time. So I had 3 young kids, and we were looking to buy a house. And we'd moved down to Hampshire, so we were just renting, and we'd looked around for ages and ages and ages, and then we'd sort of settled on this house that we thought might be our family home, but as the estate agent said, it was in need of some modernisation, as in large amounts of cash and a big project to turn it around. And it took quite a long time because somebody else put in a higher offer, and it was sort of dragging on and on and on. And then by the time it was sort of, they said, "Do you want it?" I was feeling quite vulnerable at work. So I could sort of read the tea leaves at B&Q that things weren't going great. And anyway, so we had a chat with our financial advisor, and we were talking about this. Obviously, buying houses and mortgages, big financial thing. And with hindsight, he sort of did a bit of coaching on us, because we said, "Oh, look, we think we want to buy this house. We put in an offer, but I'm a bit worried about losing my job. So, maybe it's not a good idea." And he said, "Well, just to hold that thought." He said, "What happens if you buy the house and everything works? You don't lose your job."
Yeah.
So, what happens then? And you go, "Okay, well, we'll buy the house and live there happily ever after." And he was like, "Okay, so hold that thought." Now, he said, so what happens if you do buy the house and you lose your job?" And we're like, "Well, it'd be a bit of a disaster, but, I guess we'll just have to sell it and we'll go from there." So he sort of got us to balance things up a bit more. So this lovely phrase that I learned in my coaching course called catastrophizing, which I think resonates with many people, where when something bad happens, you blow it up out of all proportion, and then all the good stuff, you kind of rubbish that and go, no, and you just fixate on the bad stuff. And so we were definitely in danger of, probably we would have talked ourselves out of buying this house. Anyway, through this chat, we're like, "Okay, all right, no, fine, let's buy it and see what happens." And so we did buy it, and I did lose my job.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And did you sell the house?
And we're still there 20 years later.
Yeah.
It's our family home, so really, I mean, just so I look back, I have told my financial advisor that he's retired now, but I just sort of thanked him for going,
And
your
that
main
analysis
job is to, sort our money out, but actually what he did was some coaching on us. And because, we probably wouldn't have bought that house.
And a lot of people sort of live with anxiety, if you like, or a lot of people do view the world very much like, maybe I won't do this and maybe I won't do that, because what if this happens? What if that happens? And they spiral into a sort of negative situation. They convince themselves it's going to be a disaster. It's quite a feat of mental agility, isn't it, to sort of think, well, what if it all goes right? What if it is actually positive? Because it oftentimes things can go one way or the other. There's
it is human nature. We're built to survive, and so you rate risk far greatly than the positives. So I even have a note now on my desk which says what's the alternative positive narrative, because that's a good prompt for me. And I've got a couple of projects that I was talking myself out of, and I thought I was catastrophizing, and then they turned out actually it all went really well. And so it's a nice prompt for when one is stressed. I see that and go stop.
Yeah.
Give it back. It doesn't mean it might not work out. So you can't just ignore and stick your head in the sand. But it's about having a bit more balance and then taking a decision once you've considered the positives as well. And often the positives are they're there.
Yes, indeed. And leaving B&Q in that way, as part of their redundancy process, did you get offered any sort of coaching or outplacement?
I had outplacement, and no, it was great. Really lovely guy helped me, and I basically went to him and said, "Look, I don't think I want another job. I think I want to set up on my own." And he was like, "Great, we'll talk about that then." And so he helped me get set up, and separately, I actually did B&Q had given me a coach just before I was leaving, so it was part of my ongoing thing, not outplacement. And so I talked to him about that as well, because I think the first session we had, I already knew I was leaving, and he was like, well, okay, we'll talk about that. And he gave 3 really good bits of advice about if you want to be successful as an independent, there's 3 things that will determine it. And I've had that conversation with other people thinking of going independent 20 or 30 times. It's really good advice.
What were those 3 things?
So three things. So I've sort of been built on them a bit, but fundamentally, and it's not rocket science, one is, have you got anything to sell? So you need some skills and experience to be, that people are going to pay you to do it. Yeah, not rocket science. I think that what I've learned is, but you can't stand still. You have to keep learning and adding new skills, evolving. Obviously the world's changing quite a lot. Also through the cycle. So when I started, there was lots of growth. So we did lots of strategy and growth projects. And then the credit crunch came in 2008-9. And I ended up doing a lot of efficiency and cost reduction projects because you have to, because nobody wanted to pay for strategy stuff. So you just keep evolving, keep adapting. So that was the first one. Second one, my book. Got to have a network. And I think when I started, I assumed it was just a network of clients, bosses with budget, shall we say. And what I've learned is, obviously they're good, but they're all incredibly busy and they only ever want to talk to you when they actually need you. And so I've found that the network is not just the bosses, but it's all the people in their organisations who know you and trust you or refer you. They're really good, your sort of allies. And then the other bit is we network a lot with other consultants. So either people that we bring in onto our projects, or sometimes, I still do occasionally work for other people and do their stuff. So there's quite a nice sort of ecosystem of freelancers or small consulting companies, and the better your network. And a lot of the projects that I've done, if I'd been on my own, I would have said, I don't do that. Yeah. But with my network, I go, yes, we can do that. And so I've been able to work on projects that I would otherwise not have done. So this sort of network of clients and people you collaborate with, and then friends to refer, is essential. So I've just started year 20 of being freelance, and every single piece of work, apart from one keynote talk, I can put the name of somebody in my network or my colleagues' name. Every single piece of work. So all this stuff about going out on LinkedIn and chasing new clients and all that stuff, particularly if you're a reluctant networker, none of us like doing that. I don't think you need to do it, because actually it's far better to just keep in touch with all the people that you already know, because you're more likely to get work from them.
But LinkedIn helps with keeping in touch with the people you already know, doesn't it? As opposed to necessarily...
Yeah. So we're big users of LinkedIn, but we've sort of changed our mindsets. All the people that are trying to sell us, training courses to, use LinkedIn to get more get more leads and all that stuff. For us, it's all about just a good way of keeping in touch with all the people that we already know. Yeah. So our sort of philosophy is we want anybody who hasn't met us before, their first experience of us, I'm talking about me and my consulting team, is delivering work, not trying to sell them work. Yeah. Right. So you get a new project from somebody you already know, but then you meet new people on that project, but then they experience you, hopefully doing good work, and we're nice people and we're friendly and we care about them. This is our strap line to us. It's more than just another project. So
right.
We do, we care. We like to interact with our clients as humans, and then they become part of our network, and then we can keep in touch with them. So rather than this just selling stuff, so all our content on LinkedIn is about keeping in touch and reminding people. So we do every week we produce retail news you might have missed. So one of my colleagues, Steve, scours all the news, all the thousands of articles that are going on about retail, and he sort of picks 5 or 6 that we think might be interesting, and we publish those. It's just a nice way to keep in touch with. But we are getting more followers, people who don't know us, but most of the core are people that know us already. So one
was have something to sell and keep evolving.
Yeah.
2 was build a network, and what was 3?
The third one is resilience, right? And so he's absolutely right, my old coach, and I've just sort of built on that a little bit. It's this combination of emotional resilience and financial resilience, and the two are quite interconnected. So when I set up on my own, I was the main breadwinner. So my wife she was still on maternity leave, and then subsequently she's gone back and retrained as a maths teacher and does some private tuition, but I'm the main breadwinner. And it's quite, and you've got a mortgage and kids and all that. It's not without its stresses. And, I had my moments over the years where you're going, what have you done? But it's worked out. So financial resilience, having a buffer of cash, because I don't think I know anyone who's had this lovely smooth every year,
peaks and
plus
troughs.
5%. It does go up and down, and it's very unpredictable when you're, sort of, just when you have a really busy period and you think you've nailed it, and then something happens, and credit crunch, and suddenly, or COVID, literally that Q2 2020, I earned 250 quid,
right?
Because all my work was cancelled apart from one talk with the London College of Fashion, thank you very much, and they rang me up and said, if you can do it on Teams rather than come into the uni, you're on.
Yeah.
But it was 25 books, 10 quid a pop. That was my earnings. So you got to be able to cope with that sort of stuff. The nice thing is just when you think, oh my God, what have I done? If you've been networking and doing good work, you get a phone call and things happen. But certainly, COVID was a good test of financial resilience. And then it links with, you can be much more resilient emotionally if you've got the money to survive. But it's not just about the money. Because I had a friend he was a client of mine when I worked at Kingfisher. We hired his consulting company, and then he got made redundant. And I'm like, blimey, if you go freelance, I'll hire you back the next day as on your own for a lot less money. And he got to keep all of it. So that was great. But he ended up stopping doing that, and he said it wasn't that he couldn't cope, but it was his partner just couldn't deal with this. Where's the money? Every month you don't know how much you're going to earn. Yeah. So
some people much prefer, don't they, a lesser income but a regular bankable income. Now this is coming in 30th of the month, 31st, whatever, as opposed to the highs and lows.
It is. It's human nature. You want to provide for your family and your kids. And I remember talking to my father a long time ago after I'd been doing it a few years, and he always worked in property, and he was just like, Neil, what are your assets? Let's go, my brand, my reputation. And have it every year. It wasn't even like, I thought, at least if you're an accountant, you've got clients who need an audit every year. I've done quite a lot of strategy workshops, and I'd have clients every year getting me to do that. But it's not a lot of, on January 1, I don't sit there going, my year is mapped out and I can already see half my target earnings.
It's interesting though, isn't it? I'm a great podcast listener, and here we are on podcast, of course. And I recently listened to Adrian Edmondson on Desert Island Disc, I think it was. Yeah. And he was talking about when he left school, and of course he wanted to be on stage and a comedian and ultimately an actor and so on. And his dad said to him, "How's that going to pay the mortgage?" And it didn't really matter to him how it was going to pay the mortgage, because he was inspired to do that and be that. But he said when he did have his first mortgage, which was over $1 million for his first mortgage, he happily told his dad that he was quite capable of paying the mortgage. So it's interesting how your parents perceive what would be a good career journey and where you should be headed. Were your parents quite influential with you?
In a very low-key supportive way. So they never sat me down and said, I think you ought to do that, but this first job in the bank, my dad helped me get that. So but they were always sort of just there, but not sort of pushing me into stuff. And it's sort of interesting being, so I'm married to a British Indian, and you see a little bit of that in Indian culture. This, you need to become my mother-in-law would love to have a doctor in the family, and sadly neither
or a lawyer.
Wife,
quite often they like lawyers,
or accountants. She's got 3 grandsons, they're all grown up, no doctors. So no, you understand that. I had a period where I was in between work before I went back to Kingfish for the second time, and I remember telling my parents that I'd got this job again, and you could sort of see the sort of relief and pride, and and it was nice for them to be able to tell their friends that, oh, Neil's got this really good job now. So but no, they were very, very.
And your boys do very different things, but how do you project onto them? And are you the same as your parents, that you have expectations projecting to them?
I mean, I think it's inevitable that even if you don't say anything, they will, because of my wife and I both went to the same well-known uni, so that sort of sets a standard, all that good stuff. But I'd like to think we're quite low key, but we haven't talked about my coaching at all. So one of the things I qualified as an executive coach about 5-6 years ago now, and I do this coaching about ikigai. I don't know if you've heard of that. So ikigai is a Japanese term, and it's sort of what's your purpose, what's your mojo, what you put on the planet to do.
Okay.
And I don't believe that most of us don't have one ikigai. It sort of evolves in time. So certainly, I'm doing now kind of what my ikigai is. But if I'd done it 20, 30 or 30 years ago, I couldn't, I wasn't ready to do that kind of stuff. Anyway, so one of the things I have done is I have done ikigai coaching with all my sons. So my youngest we're still going through it because he's final year of uni. And it's been, I think it has been really helpful in different ways for them to help them figure out what it is they want to do. But the lovely thing about ikigai, and I think generally, career stuff with younger people now, is they all start with, what do you like doing? Because, I think we're similar era, no one asked us what we like doing, just what are you good at?
No, I got an Ucker handbook, they used to call it. It was a thin, slimline book with all the university courses possible. My dad was like, you're going to university, here's your handbook. And I flipped through thinking, I want a job at the end of this. I don't want to be doing, I don't know, ancient Greek philosophy or something. I want something. So I sort of narrowed it down to banking and law. I probably could have included accountancy if I'd thought about it. And then one of my dad's friends was a solicitor and said, why don't you go and have a look at what goes on in the courts? So I sat and watched a court case and thought, actually, that's why I'll do that. But it wasn't because anyone said, do you enjoy analysing things? Have you got a gift for language, or those sorts of things that might be key to being a lawyer? But now, I mean, one of the things I think about as a parent is that we just don't know what the jobs are or are going to be. So
not only are they very different jobs, so my 2 old sons who are working, the jobs they're doing now didn't exist when I was starting out. But the just proliferation of choice, for us it was doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, military, teacher, nursing, and a few went in to be entrepreneurs, the born and bred entrepreneurs. But the choices were so much more limited.
And you sort of went on to a career, almost like a train track, once you're on that train, that's the way you're going, and there's no option to deviate onto. Whereas now, I think there's much more fluidity. People do have several careers, don't they?
Absolutely. So my friend Paul Donkers, who set up the Ikigai Coaching Institute, he started out. So he's got their question cards, and they start with all the questions about what you love it, so what are your passions, and then you go on to you're good at it, so what are your skills, and then Ikigai is supposed to be the kind of, if you could get something that you love doing and you're good at, that's pretty good. And then you have to do reality check, which is, does it earn you enough money? Sort of, have you got the skill, good qualifications? But it's a really nice principle. So you just always start with, but what do you love doing? And then once you've got that, then have a look at the what is it that you're good at.
Thinking about that, I think probably I started from the reality check and then tried to put a job into it. Will it earn any money? What job does?
I think that's probably, I know a few people who just go, I just want to get money, and sort of, okay. But I'm just about to start doing some Ikigai coaching with a young chap who's just graduated, and he said, I'm not that bothered about money, as long as I've got enough, I'm quite creative, I want to do some interesting stuff. maybe he's like Adrian Evanson.
And
he might end up being super rich, but he's
yeah.
not being driven by money. But and that's fair enough. Living is expensive, and so.
Yeah, and I think the different generations have a different view on it. I think our generation was sort of, you need to get married and get a mortgage and get a career and whatever, and there's much more, as I say, fluidity for others.
Yeah, I don't know that the sort of slightly negative view I have is that, unfortunately, where there was this thing about you did better than your parents, the previous, every generation did better. And I look at my kids now and I'm going, gosh, to get on the housing ladder, that's tough. My parents loaned my sister and I £10,000, and that was our deposit back in 1987. There's no way, my kids need multiples of that to help them. We all got decent pensions, now they're all paying into their pensions, but it's peanuts. They're all going to be working till they're 80. They've got student loans they've got to pay off. So I don't want to be too negative, but there is I can understand why this dream that we all were aspiring to is a bit like it's a bit unrealistic. So we'll just get on and live more in the moment and just do interesting jobs. And so the optimist in me says I have faith in the younger generation that we're built to survive, so they'll figure it out. But I don't think I'm not sure I know what the answer is, but I trust them to figure it out.
So I've heard you talk before about your 3 C's. 3 seems to be your magic number today. Your 3 C's, which, if I can remember, it's your coaching, your consultancy, and your connecting.
Yes.
Do those 3 things work together for you in your career, and how do you balance your different responsibilities and roles in those areas?
Yeah, it's a good question. Not as well as they should. Certainly, if my consulting job, I'm a strategy consultant and I advise companies on strategy. And one of my big mantras is do a few things really well, preferably one thing, and really focus on that because you get synergy and you get famous in all of that. And I don't do that myself, but I love the variety of what I do. So my day job is still consulting because I've been doing that the longest, and so you can make more money doing that. But I love the coaching. And so I'm starting to do a bit more coaching through consulting clients. So there's a bit of synergy there. But some of my coaching is completely random. So I'm about to start coaching a vicar in a church.
Oh, okay.
Which is nothing to do with my consulting, but churches are fascinating organisations that have lots of similarities to issues of strategy and culture and people and conflict. And in a church, the difference, if you're in a business and you're the boss, you can sit people down and give them feedback and give them an appraisal, but you can't do that in a church. Everybody's got to be really nice to each other. So really interesting. I in lockdown when I was training, I coached this very young vicar who was new into this group of churches, and we never talked about God at all. He had lots of training in theology college, but he needed training in interacting with people, leading people, managing, and it was absolutely fascinating. So I really love all that stuff, but there's a little bit of synergy with the coaching and the consulting, and then the connecting, because networking, 3 C's is better than 2 C's and an N. So connecting is my networking. And it's probably mainly practicing what I preach. So everything I've learned about how to network, I use for my consulting and coaching, all the work that I get. But it's a bit of a sideline. But I think having hit on this, reluctant networker thing, and I think when I started out, so when I was in between jobs, 25 years ago, I had outplacement, and I was working in manufacturing, and I spent a lot of time on reorganisations and sacking people, and I was like, I don't really want to do that again. And he said, that's absolutely fine, because he said if you get another job doing that, that's it. You'll be just labelled, factory closer, axe wielder, and I don't want to do that. So he said, if you want to change industry, you need to network. And that was the sort of moment where I went, oh God, that networking, isn't that all about going to events and working in a room full of strangers? And then you tell all your friends that you're out of a job and you need some help, and they go, oh yeah, I can use stuff. And it just really felt quite painful. And And so that was where I got this idea of writing a book about networking. And at the time when I started, I thought, I'm the only one who doesn't like networking. Everybody else is out there pressing the flesh, loving these breakfast events and all that. Pretty naive. Funnily, I've learnt, no, that's not true. I do a lot of polls when I do talks, and you have a choice: are you reluctant or natural networker? And normally I'd say about 2/3 of the audience will go, yeah, no, I'm reluctant. So it's quite refreshing to know, you're not alone. Most people actually find networking quite difficult. But it's because they don't understand networking, I think proper networking. And there's two myths that I've learnt when I ask people, the reluctant networkers, so what is it about networking that you don't like? And it's two things, basically. One is events. It's amazing. You say networking, that's about going to an event, isn't it?
And big events.
Yeah, big events and walking in, and it's all this noise and full of people, and don't leave until you've got 20 business cards and 5
Everybody
conversations. It feels like everybody knows each other. You've got to break into conversations, and then you finally do that, and then it gets a bit boring, and how do you leave? And it's just painful. But the events are just one way of doing it, and in my view, not a very productive way of doing it. Particularly the events where it's all about new people. So my point is, my mantra is, it's all about deep and existing relationships, right? So I'm going to an event tonight, but it's my old business school, and there'll be some of my classmates from 30 odd years ago. So I'll meet some new people there, but I'm actually just going to see deep and existing relationships. And that's a lot more fun to turn up in a room and see some people. Oh, Sarah, hi, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while. And then you'll be talking to somebody and you'll introduce me to some people. So there are ways to do events that aren't quite as daunting. But I do a huge amount of networking. All my work comes from it. But I do very little events. It's all one-to-one. It's having coffees with people I already know. I haven't seen you for a few years. How's that? Because that's where all the work comes from. Not from once in a while you meet somebody new and they go, Neil, you're just the person I was waiting for, and boom, they work. But it doesn't happen very often because it's all about relationships, and that takes time. So one is about events, and then the other one is, don't want to be rude about Americans, but so the American way of networking, where it's quite what I'd call transactional. So it's sort of, Sarah, do I think Sarah can help me? Yes, yeah, I think I can. Right, I'll have a chat with you. And I say it's not uniquely American. There's plenty of Brits and others who do it, but it's more like that. And I've met some reluctant American networkers, and in America, I think that'd be quite a challenge because it is quite. And we all find that quite difficult to do this. Well, I'm only talking to you because I want something. And it just all feels a bit like, but my view, that's not networking, that's selling. Yeah. I think, networking is building long-term relationships that are two-way. Maybe I help you, maybe you help me, or maybe we just have a nice chat, and that you've built the relationship, and then maybe in a year or 2 years that we help each other out. So I think if when you explain to people that there's lots of other ways to network than going to events and working in a room full of strangers, and proper networking is just building good long-term mutually beneficial relationships, people sort of relax a bit. And so one of the things I'll say to people is don't put yourself under pressure to get something out of every conversation. Just have conversations. And I have a nice story. So I do some talks for students of sixth form colleges, and just trying to get people, my networking light talk, getting people into just doing a little bit of networking. And I've got a lovely story. So my eldest son, his job came out of one of my networking talks in lockdown. Okay. So he came home, graduated in 2020 in the pandemic. We'd done Ikigai, and he was marketing in sport. There wasn't any sport in the pandemic, literally. I mean, I go on BBC Sport quite a lot, and for 3 months there was nothing on it. So he was home, and I didn't have any work at the time, so I did a lot of networking but it was all, on Zoom with people I already knew, just catching up. So, I think in the pandemic, people split into two groups. One was, I've still got a job and it's just head down survival, so they didn't want to talk to consultants like us. And then there was the rest of us who didn't have any work and were sitting around twiddling our thumbs. So I did a lot of networking in the pandemic. And another one of my mantras is start with a relationship, not the transaction. Mm-hmm. So, Sarah, how are you? How's the family? And one of the few nice things about the pandemic was it was suddenly all right to go, it's a bit shit at the moment.
Yeah.
Before that, it felt like we all had to, what I call, wear our mask of invincibility. Everything's great. And, even if it wasn't great, you'd still tell people it was really, really good. And so it was really nice to just have open conversations. And so, I'd say, oh, yeah, I've got the kids home. We were lucky. We had that first lockdown was quite nice because my two kids from uni came back home. My youngest son was there. One of the girlfriends came, and it was quite enjoyable. But so we had good chats about the family and, what's your son looking to do? Oh, he's looking to get a job. What's he interested in? Marketing in sport. And then people go, I know someone at the Football Association. There won't be any work there yet, but I could set him up with a chat. And it was really nice. People were really sort of helpful. And at the end of one of these calls, this guy said, oh, Neil, I'm looking for an intern for my company, and it's sales and marketing, so it ticks the marketing box. It's a tech startup, it's not sport, but I only need someone for 3 months. Would your son be interested? So it's like, I don't know, probably, because he needs some work, but I'll have a chat. Anyway, so he had a chat and interviewed and got the job, and he stayed there for 15 months, not 3 months. And he now works at Formula E, electric car, in marketing. And when that job came up, he was able to interview with, I've done 15 months as a sales and marketing manager in a startup. So he did a lot of stuff, because he literally was sort of the sales and marketing department. So he could talk really credibly. So it's a really sort of nice story about how networking, I didn't set this call up with this guy to ask for a job for my son. And I did lots of other networking that didn't lead to jobs for my son, but that one did. And it just came out of the conversation because we were starting with the relationship. And that's the hidden benefits of networking. If you don't, as I say, put yourself under pressure to, I'm trying to sell you something, I need a job, or I'm a consultant, I need a project, or I'm a coach, do you want some coaching? Just have chats with people and good stuff happens. Yeah. But you can never tell which conversation's going to lead to anything, what it is, because it might be work for you, it might be just a good book recommendation, it might be a job for your son, and when, because it might be immediately, or actually they ring you up a year later and go, oh, do you remember that conversation we had? I was just thinking about that. So it's amazing networking, but you got to do it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we obviously had a workshop with you, didn't we? I think it must be a good couple of years ago now. We did that. I went to a breakfast networking event where you were presenting. I think it was organised by one of the accountancy firms, and then we followed it up with a workshop. And I think that was one of the things that I really took away from that, this sense of actually the only thing I'm looking for in networking is building relationships. This is nothing to do with either me selling or me buying. It's not that. It's just about building relationships. And one of the things I've always tried to do with my clients is to develop friendships with them. You obviously can't cross the professional boundary, but getting to know people, understanding how they tick, because employment law is just not about black and white. You have to understand how your advice is going to impact them with their culture, with the way their business operates and so on. And a lot of that comes from getting to know them as people. But definitely my last couple of years of focus has been on, okay, this is about relationship building. This is not about, is there anybody in this room who'd like to buy peace of mind? Because frankly, there probably isn't.
And your life in its whole. So good example, our good friend Roger at Experience Hampshire. So he's part of our networking group. We'll give him a plug. Experience Hampshire. I've been on 3 walking tours now with my wife. So we did Southampton, where you go into the vaults.
Yes.
We did the Portsmouth Old Town with Sam. And then we did Winchester Cathedral. We went up on top. And that was all because I'm part of Hampshire Business Networking. We met Roger and I was like, oh, that's great. And so it's an example of how networking has enriched my life, our lives. We had really interesting evenings. Something to do with work, but.
And my thing with Roger is, so Roger is a solopreneur or a solopreneur, whatever you call these people these days, like yourself. So he's never going, at the moment, he's not going to buy peace of mind. It's not about him buying peace of mind. But developed the relationship with him, had various coffees and so on, and then realised where he could add value to my offering to other people. So we now, for people who recommend us for peace of mind, if they sign up to our employer's subscription package, we send them a reward. And it traditionally had always been a bunch of flowers for the lady, a bottle of wine for the guy.
Yeah.
But now we send them an Experience Hampshire voucher. And that adds, I think, authenticity and credibility to my business. But it's not about Roger having bought anything from me, but it's definitely a valuable connection to have made. So
but that's this thing that our relationships are not linear or just about work. There's just other stuff. And if you just sort of get out there, interact, build relationships, and good stuff happens, but you just don't know what it's going to be. But it's definitely better than sitting at home not interacting with other people. And
so your perspective as a coach, how does developing networking skills benefit leaders and managers in their professional growth, if you like? Is it something that you can combine with that?
About a lot of coaching conversations, there'll always be a bit about networking. There is a sort of connection. So my coaching, you've heard me bang on about this, but my strapline with coaching is what I call helping introverted leaders find their voice.
Yes.
Right. Which is very linked to reluctant networkers, reluctant people, introverts, not necessarily the deep introverts, but just people who are not the really loud look at me. And we live, at least in the Western world, I think less so in Eastern cultures, in this sort of view of leadership. To be a good leader, you've got to be loud, dominant, assertive, charismatic, the dreaded word gravitas, have gravitas. And so if you are a bit more on the introverted side, you sort of going, and I've coached some people where the only reason we're coaching is because they've been told by their bosses, so they do a succession plan, and this person I'm coaching is on the succession plan to get onto the board, but they need to be more, they love them because they're really good at doing their job, but they need to be a bit louder, a bit more assertive. And you have this sort of disconnect, because if you're not like that, we are wired a certain way, and some people love the limelight and dominating and leading meetings, and that can be a good thing. But for the rest of us, so trying to be something that you're not is not a recipe for great happiness, but also success, because that's not gravitas. You will not build gravitas if you're trying to do something that you're in the back of your mind going, this isn't really me. So and linked to that, so there is then this, funnily enough, those people are also not very good networkers as well, because they're just busy doing the work, managing their teams, being really good leaders in my view, but they're missing out on all that stuff. So we do end up talking about, you do need to just get out there a bit more. There's a lot of, if you want to get promoted, it isn't just about being good at the job. You do need to press the flesh and influence people, and so a lot of it about internal networking, particularly if you're in a big company. So if you want to get promoted, I'm coaching a guy who's a partner, but he's a salaried partner at a law firm, and he wants to become an equity partner. And they have their annual review, and in coming up in May, and we're talking about, so who might you need to go and have a chat with, because his boss is super supportive, really wants him to get that promotion. There's a limited number of these slots up for grabs. They've all got to want you to join the club, or at least you don't want any to be going absolutely not. You probably need a few big fans, not just your boss, and then the rest of them are all that's fine. So he's needing to do a lot of networking at a time where he's just like, I just want to do the work. I'm on the career path because of my billing, my hours. I bring in all this money. So that's quite interesting.
That's a really interesting thing, because within our business, obviously we have, we call them A members and B members, and B members are salaried partners, and then we have associates who want to become partners and so on. And we have an annual meeting when we talk about promotion. And quite often, just before the meeting, you get an approach from somebody who's put in an application for promotion and has been told, oh, you need to make contact with it. And they say, can I come and have a coffee? And then going back to your sort of, networking and your meaningful relationships, I would prefer those people to have been talking to me throughout their career. I'd like our trainee solicitors in whatever area they are to be talking to me, because one day it might be relevant. And for me to really get to know them and understand them, rather than just have a quick coffee before the election happens.
Yeah, exactly. One of the phrases I use is do it when you don't need anything. It's much harder to network, partly just for your own benefit. I had a really interesting chat with a lady who came up after one of my talks, and she said, until 6 weeks ago, I had this really good job. And people were forever, messaging me going, I'm out of work or whatever, can I pick your brains? Have you got any advice? And she said, I was really flattered by it. And I was very generous with my time. And if I could help them, I would. And it was all great. And then I lost my job. And now it's my turn. The boot's on the other foot. She said, even though I know all these people are willing to help, like I was, now that it's my turn because I need something, it's really hard to ask. And so, back to my message with the students, is start now. When okay, they do need jobs, but the more you can do it when you don't need anything. So you literally are just keeping in touch. It's much more low key. That's how you build the relationships. Because I think, I know if people come up to me at an event and they're trying to sell me something, first thing happens, I put my barrier up and I'm like this, very protective of my network. We're forever being contacted by sort of software companies and go, oh, you work in retail, you've got these great connections, could you introduce us? And we're like, no chance. That's our brand. Our referrals are really valuable. We don't know whether your technology is any good. So you put the barrier up. But if you start with a relationship and not the transaction, and we connect a bit as humans, then when you talk a bit about work, you sort of go, oh, yeah, I met someone the other day. Yeah, you should have a chat. Let me introduce you, because, why not? We're human beings are naturally collaborative. I do say to you, it's never too late to get back in touch with people, but it's better to do it along the way. So my last tip for the students, I only give them 3, is just keep in touch with all your classmates, because some of them are going to go on to some really interesting stuff. And if you wait till they're useful to you and you go, hello, remember me? They might take a call. But if you've kept in touch with them, gone for a beer or meal once a year or whatever, they're your friends. And of course they'll help you. It's much easier.
Yeah. So you've touched on lots and lots of tips along the way there in our discussion. I do normally end by saying, have you got any final words of wisdom or tips for our audience? But I think you've probably provided loads. So if you do, fantastic. If not, where can people get your book? How can they get in touch with you if they've got consulting or coaching needs?
So the book is on Amazon. Reluctant Networker. It's in a physical copy. It's also in Kindle version, so that's the easiest place to get it. And then my consulting company is, I think probably easy, just look me up on LinkedIn. So Neil Munz-Jones. There's only one of me. My father was a Jones, and in the late 1950s he took my mother's maiden name to make it Munz-Jones, which was quite a statement in the 1950s. But that's what he did. So he was Michael Jones. There were quite a lot of them, but then Michael Munz-Jones. Yeah. People remember you, or occasionally I'd meet people and go, oh, I met your mum or your dad, because they remember the name. So yes, I do. I've got a consulting website, I've got a coaching website, I've got a Reluctant Networker website, but LinkedIn's probably the best.
Perfect. And our podcast always ends with an audience-sourced question. So Neil, your question is in our envelope. So take a little look at that and see.
Gosh, it's like opening a Christmas cracker. Audience source question. What's something about you, whether it's a habit, a passion or a quirk, that most people wouldn't expect but plays a big role in who you are today? Gosh. I was doing the random thing, but it hasn't really affected the big role in my life. Was I used to sing in a choir.
Okay.
So did that with my wife. Award-winning choir as well.
Oh.
We just sang locally, but every time we entered, we always won. So
there you go.
So that was good. The Westhill Park Community Choir. So we sing that, which is I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I was going to do, because it was one of these choirs where there's 90 people and 80 of them are women and there's 10 men, and so they were always desperate to get the men. And so my wife was nagging me for quite a while to join, and eventually I went, and I was like, oh, actually, I quite enjoyed that a lot more than I thought. So,
and it's good for your health, Anton. So
yes.
I've been listening to Dr. Michael Molesley's Just One Thing. So he sort of says to people to focus on just one thing to improve your health, and it might be getting your steps up or whatever. And through his podcast and indeed his book, he made various suggestions, and one of them was about singing, and singing in a choir particularly is good for your health.
There was it was interesting. So one of the other dads came, and he was working in the military, and he turned up late, and he came in, and you could see he was quite sort of just stressed and all that, and then as we walked out, he went, I feel better now. So I think that's the quirky bit. The other the passion bit, you might recall cricket.
That we could get through the whole talk without mentioning it.
Cricket. My middle son works for he watches cricket matches, so love cricket. He used to, I guess, first bit of coaching I did was through my kids' cricket club. I used to do the Colts, manage the teams. So I guess I sort of thought I quite like doing this coaching thing. So that maybe helped me into coaching and mentoring. There you go.
Oh, good stuff. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Neil. It's been lovely chatting, and we will continue this conversation offline, I'm sure. Yeah. So I look forward to doing it.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful and empowering. To stay connected, why not hit the subscribe button? Or if you think your friends might be interested, why not rate us as a 5? To be first to know about upcoming episodes, follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and LinkedIn, where you'll find us at Warner Goodman LLP, or follow us on YouTube, where our episodes are at Piece of Pod. Thank you again. Until next time.